Clock here. All right, in interest of time, I think we'll get started. Good evening, everybody. My name is Steve Markowitz. I'm the president of the Great Neck Democratic Club. On behalf of my vice president, Charles Schneider, and the other members of the board, I'd like to welcome you here tonight to a very, very important event. Our congressional district has had the good fortune of having some wonderful people represent us. Former Congressman Gary Ackerman and our current Congressman Steve Israel. And next year we'll be entering a new era with somebody else to represent us. And we're extraordinarily fortunate that we have some outstanding candidates on the Democratic side. And I'm sure whoever emerges as the ultimate Democratic candidate will go on to victory in November. But right now we're looking towards a primary on June 28th. And we have a very, very important, but a very, very tough choice about who is going to be our candidate. And tonight is an opportunity to hear from the candidates, and you'll have an opportunity to pose your own questions. So let me first introduce the candidates, then we'll talk about I'll introduce our moderator, and he will talk about the ground rules, how the debate will run tonight. And just going in alphabetical order, we have Town Councilwoman, a very dear friend, Anna Kaplan. And then we have the former outstanding supervisor of the town of North Hempstead, John Kamen. From the eastern portion of the district, an outstanding legislator from Suffolk County, Steve Stern. And all of you know, for 8 years, the county executive, Nassau County, Tom Swazi. And while he's walking up, an attorney from Jericho, who has been a candidate, Democratic candidate for the State Assembly and for the Nassau County Legislature, a true progressive Democrat, Jonathan Clark, will be up here in a moment. We are very, very fortunate tonight to have as our moderator somebody you all know, Larry Levy, former chief political columnist of Newsday and the co-host of PBS show Face Off. Larry is currently the executive dean of the National Center for Suburban Studies at Hofstra University, an academic research and consulting institution that has profoundly affected the way people all over the world appreciate the problems and promise of the suburbs. At Newsday, Larry won many of the journalism's top awards, including Pulitzer finalist for in-depth works on suburban politics, education, taxation, and other key issues. There's probably nobody who understands Nassau County politics better than Larry, and we're very fortunate to have him here tonight. Larry is still in the world of journalism and politics as a guest contributor to Newsday, News 12, as well as CNN, CBS 2, the New York Times, and other local and national media outlets. Before I turn over the program to Larry, just want to remind you again, following the conclusion of the debate, we are going to conduct a straw poll among members of the Great Neck Democratic Club. If you'd like to join the club and you're a registered Democrat, please make sure to fill out an application in the back. And if you have a question you'd like to pose to the candidates, just raise your hand. Someone will come around and give you a card to put your question on, and Larry will choose which cards he wants to use to mix in with his own questions. So with that, Good luck to all the candidates, and I'm turning it over to Larry Levy. Thank you.
Wow, what a turnout. If we could get this percentage out on June 28th, it might be some contest, huh? Thank you, Steve. What that introduction meant, of course, is that I used to be somebody and he couldn't get Megyn Kelly to do this, right? But welcome to what I hope will be a great night in Great Neck. I believe, and very seriously, that a moderator should be the least memorable part of a debate. So I apologize if you came to hear the snarky former columnist rip into the candidates. The sparks or the snark will have to come from the candidates, and they'll have their opportunities. Not only will they have the chance to rebut what their debate mates say, but also to ask questions of each other. The only way that I may be ruthless at keeping candidates in line is on the matter of time. There will be ample reminders from our trusty timekeeper, Charles, there. Please show him, your colleagues, and most importantly, the audience, the respect of sticking to the time. So here's how it's going to go. Every candidate gets an opening statement of up to 2 minutes. If you don't have any 2 minutes to say, you can go shorter. You'll have to trust me on this. I did a random selection of who goes first, second, third, and for your closing statement, if you want to do one, it'll be reversed. And John Clark actually came out first in my random eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I'm going to ask the first few questions directed at all the candidates, and each candidate will have up to a minute to answer, followed by, if necessary, by a 30-second rebuttals. Then we will have at least one, and time permitting, 2 rounds of questioning by the candidates. The candidate answering the question will get 2 minutes to do so. This is one-on-one. And every candidate will get a minute to rebut after everybody's piled on them. The candidate originally asking the question will, if they want it, get a minute to rebut the onslaught. And then we're going to go to questions from the audience. You're filling out cards. We already have a stack of them. I don't know how many more we're going to be able to fit. I'm going to select and perhaps edit them for clarity and brevity. I will not read long preambles, and I am not likely to ask a question meant only for a single candidate. You're not going to get to do that. Everyone will get a minute to answer and 30 seconds for rebuttal. This is of the audience questions. And finally, closing statements, 1 minute, no rebuttal. So with that, you all understand? Any questions about the rules? We all set? Great. And with that, we're going to start with opening statements. Here's our timekeeper. Jonathan Clark, you're first. 2 minutes.
Good evening, and thank you everybody for coming out. I know many of you do not know me. I am the outside candidate in this race, so I'll just give you a brief synopsis of who I am. I was originally born in Freeport, New York, and I was born to an extremely poor family. I dropped out of high school when I was 16 years old to support my father, who was a disabled veteran. I went to school at night, and I graduated from high school, and then I did the same thing, going to Nassau Community College, and then Hunter College, CUNY, where I received a degree in philosophy. I graduated with honors from there. After that, I had a mountain of student loans, so I always wanted to be an attorney, but I took a few years off. I worked as a market analyst, and after becoming a market analyst, I eventually saved up enough money and decided to go to law school, which was coincidentally in 2008 when the market crashed, so it was a good time not to be an analyst any longer. After I graduated from law school with honors, and I was an editor of the International Law Review, I was extremely interested in ethics, and as a result, on my character and fitness interview, I was hired by the head of character and fitness and the chair of the grievance committee for the 10th Judicial District. I believe that ethics is the most important thing in government and in law, and that is what I really want to bring to this race, is a focus on ethics and a focus on doing the right thing. If you know me also, I'm a Sanders supporter, so that kind of distinguishes me from the rest of the people up here as well. And we'll see tonight during the debate. I hope I can distinguish myself even further. Thank you.
Second up, Mr. Stern.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm Steve Stern, and it's my privilege to serve as Suffolk County legislator. And I'm proud to have the endorsement and support of our great Congressman, Steve Israel, for my candidacy to be your next congressman. Steve Israel knows that I've worked for over a decade in the Suffolk County legislature, working hard for our middle-class families and protecting our veterans and our older neighbors, preserving our environment, particularly the Long Island Sound, and our quality of life. I'm a husband and a father. My mother was one of the first women's-owned businesses in our area growing up. Today, my wife runs her own local business, and that's where my values come from. And that's why I'm so passionate about protecting a woman's right to choose and equal pay for equal work and paid family leave, not just here in New York, but for our entire nation. And our next member of Congress has to be strong enough to stand up to the Tea Party extremists who would shut down the government over Planned Parenthood. Steve Israel is supporting my candidacy, and I'm proud to have his endorsement because he knows that I am the candidate who is best able to represent our core democratic values and win in the fall. He also knows that I'm the best candidate to continue his legacy of fighting for our middle-class families and making college more affordable, preserving Medicare and Social Security for today and for generations to come. And we all know, I'm sure you would all agree with me, that it cannot just be about what we do, but how we do it. And so with your support, I look forward to the opportunity in coming back here to the Great Neck Democratic Club and sharing with you great successes on what I've accomplished, but most importantly, how I've done it and make you proud.
The third up, Anna Kaplan. 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Anna Kaplan, and I look across the room and I see many friends, neighbors, community leaders, and also a lot of elected officials that I've worked with to make the town that we are in tonight a better place for all the residents. I thank for the opportunity to have been able to work with a lot of you here, residents and the electeds. And I stand on a record of being elected twice to town council. I'm serving as your councilwoman right now, and I've been very committed in keeping our taxes under control, working and helping our infrastructure, working on our parks and the community that's so important to us, and making sure that your voices are heard. I've tried very hard to really build bridges between a lot of different communities and make sure that everyone in this district have a seat at the table and their voices can be heard. I walk around the district and also in the town, and one of the questions I get asked a lot is, why are you running for Congress? The question is very simple and direct, and it has a very simple and a direct answer. I'm running to be your voice in government. I believe government needs to be responsive to the needs of the people that it serves. And I have the honor and pleasure of being that voice for the 4th District of town of North Hempstead, and it would be a great honor to have that voice for the 3rd Congressional District in Congress. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Fourth up, Tom Swazi, 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Larry. Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to be here tonight. This is an amazing turnout, and I appreciate the fact that all of you came here to participate like this. I want to start by telling you that I think that the people that are running for office up here are all wonderful people that have great records, most of them, in getting things done in government. Steve Stern did some great work for veterans out in Suffolk County, and John Kamen did great work in town of North Hempstead, Project Independence, among other things. Anna Kaplan has a personally inspiring story that many of you know already, and John Clark is a young man who's devoted to getting into public service right now. I think that right now, politics in America is in a very bad place. And it's good that we have good people like yourselves and the people up here involved. But I've been out of office for 6 years. And I know that people are sick of politics, and they're sick of politicians. People talk to you differently when you're out of office than when you're in office, and I hear it all the time that people are just really angry. And the one thing that I think distinguishes me from the other candidates that are up here is that I have a proven record throughout my career that I'm willing to take on very tough fights against very powerful interests to try and get some things done, to try and benefit the people that I serve. Whether it was my Fix Albany campaign that I started back in 2003 when I said Shelley Silver and Joe Bruno and the Democrats in the Assembly as well as the Republicans in the state Senate were giving us a broken system that gave us our high property taxes. Or whether it was I ran against Elliot Spitzer and got, that didn't turn out very well for me, obviously. Didn't turn out very well for him either, but to fight for changes in the state. And an issue that upset a lot of people in this room when I was trying to push for consolidation of governments in Nassau County. I've been in a lot of different battles to try and improve things on behalf of the people. I've won a lot of them and I've lost some as well, and I've learned a lot from my losses as well as my wins. But I want to try and serve the people of this district, and I've proven throughout my career that I'm willing to take on tough fights when I believe it's the right thing to do on behalf of the people I serve. Thank you.
And finally, John Kamen, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Larry. My name is John Kamen, and I am running for United States Congress. By way of background, I joined the May Newberger administration after coming from the private sector to be a public safety commissioner and an advisor to May Newberger. May Newberger was a mentor. I then was invited by the great Tom DiNapoli to become a Nassau County District Court judge when an appointment opened up. I then ran for that position and won. I left that position to run for town supervisor, the North Hempstead town supervisor, and I served 5 terms, 10 years as North Hempstead town supervisor, the chief executive and financial officer of the 5th largest town in the United States of America. I left that to work for the governor to help with storm recovery, and at the same time chair NYFA, the Nassau Interim Finance Authority, which helped, or tried to help, certainly a county in financial distress. I have spent many years in government working in complicated, complex areas where people were in distress, where governments were in distress. I understand how government works and what the needs are. We are living in a time where people are frustrated with government. It is not working. People are angry. There's a concern that what we're putting into our government is not worth what we're getting back. And so I look to what's going on nationally, and we see people running for Congress who are running on the platform of dismantling government. We see people who are running for president who are running to disenfranchise races, religions, people of all walks of life. This is where government has gone wrong. Government, I believe, is an extension of the people. Those of us in this room, those of us who are Democrats, believe that there is some role that we can play to make government work, to make our communities and our country better. We need to stand up for what we think is right. I have done that at every level of government. I think I have something to offer. I've been preparing for this day, this run, for a long time. Whether or not I knew it, many of you did. I believe that I am the person that can best serve this district at this time in our community and in our country, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for sticking to the time. It was great. And this turnout really is incredible. I do this from time to time for other organizations, and you don't often see people pushing in the door. Oh, thank you. There are some seats over here. I can't see around the corner, but I'm going to take the word, so you might want to work your way up a little bit, unless the fire marshal has something to say about that, and I'm actually not joking. Certainly from the questions from the audience, judging by what I'm seeing, and including some of my own. But I wanted to start out a little more locally. Tip O'Neill did say that all politics is local, and once upon a time in the era of earmarks, it was easy, fairly easy for members of Congress to bring dollars back to their district. So I'm asking all of you, and each of you, this is for all of you, you get a minute, 2 minutes to answer, and it'll be 1 minute rebuttals. Let me make sure that's true. 1 minute, right, thank you, timekeeper. See, I'm not even following it. I'd like to ask you, how would you as freshman or woman, probably in the minority, go about tapping federal sources for local problems? And what experiences in your career have prepared you to navigate the hallways and committee rooms of Congress? We're going to start out, we're going to go from the left to the right this time. Tom Swazi.
I think one of the great things that Steve Israel did is he focused on these big national issues and was involved in national issues, but he delivered locally as well. And I think that that's something that every person who aspires for this seat should aspire to do, is to try and bring home things to the local area. I've got a career of doing that, whether it was as mayor of Glen Cove, when I brought in over $50 million to a small little city to clean up Superfund sites and build infrastructure, and was rated one of the models for the nation for cleaning up polluted sites, or bringing in money to reduce the nitrogen in the sewage treatment plant, or doing its county executive to bring money in for economic development or infrastructure improvements, both in Albany and in Washington, D.C. I think that one of my unique abilities as an elected official has been the ability to actually figure out in federal programs. You can't go and ask government to give you what you want. You have to find out what it is they're giving programs in, and then figure out how what you want fits into those programs. And I brought in hundreds of millions of dollars throughout my career in doing that, and I'll do an even better job to bring money back to this district for the Long Island Sound, for research and technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Stern.
Economic development, protecting our environment, innovative housing for our young people and our older neighbors as well. These are all things that we know are very important, but we also know that you cannot move forward and you cannot get the things that we want and know are so important to our local economy and our local environment unless you have the infrastructure to serve it. And whether that's in Suffolk County with a non-existent sewer infrastructure, or in Nassau County and other parts of the North Shore where infrastructure is in desperate need of help, some of it is crumbling, you have to be able to get the federal dollars necessary to meet the need. It used to be that the federal government would pay for about 90% of the infrastructure that we needed. Over the past 2 decades, it's paid for exactly 0. Recently, it took new leadership. It took a new generation of legislators to recognize the problem, bring together federal and state and local levels of government to start the process of getting the funding that we needed. I have the experience to do that in Washington as your congressman.
Certainly I agree. Anybody who's involved with government at the local level understands that we need to bring in federal dollars. When I worked for May Newberger, I used to go to Washington on her behalf and bring in dollars, and we had great success. As town supervisor, I made that a priority. And I too brought in $50, $60, $70 million over the course of time when I was town supervisor. I started with a $75,000 grant for Project Independence, turned that into a $1 million grant from the federal government. I would go to Washington with a team of leaders, people who could help me make the case. And the key to getting money from Washington is to make sure that the people who are delivering the money understand that the local commitment is real, that we understand what the problem is, that their money is not going to be wasted. So if I want money from Washington or New York State, I need to understand that the dollars are going to be well received and utilized properly. And we did that year after year. And so we revised our fleet with electric buses and electric hybrid technology. We brought in money for our waterways. We brought in money for seniors, as I've indicated. Ultimately, every year, it was our responsibility to get the job done. We did that as partners with our Washington partners and with state partners as well.
As I entered the council seat, I often would interact with a lot of residents, and I was told by a lot of seniors that it's just becoming very cost prohibitive for them to stay in the town. This is the town they knew, and they really want to stay here. I worked with a developer who tried to get tax credits, and we actually started developing a plan to have 72 units of affordable senior housing here in Manhasset, a place that was never really recognized as a place that needs help, whether it being federal help or state help. It's trying to find out what the needs of the community are, what the residents want from you, and try to work on those needs. I also came in where we had plans to develop a park that was really in disrepair, and I knew the Manhasset residents really wanted to see this park up and running, and worked with our county legislators, with our town, and also a lot of private individuals, and we have a great park, Manhasset Valley now, to show as a result. It's all of us working together. Thank you.
Well, the way I see the answer to this question is really in 2 parts, and it's kind of ignored. The first thing is You can't take money that money doesn't, if the money doesn't exist. So the tax structure that we have now is clearly got to be changed. I think that all the income that's flowing to the top wealthiest people, and they're not paying their fair share, is leaving a lack of federal funds to pay for infrastructure. Now the second thing, well actually there's three things now. So New York is a net donor state, which means that for every dollar we put in, we only get about 80 cents back. So we have to ask ourselves, why is this happening? I think the root of this is corruption from the top down, from local governments all the way to the top. You're not going to get money if that money is going to be wasted on projects that are just going to be squandered on pay to play, and it's going to be given away to county contractors who have absolutely no responsibility for the money that they get. So if we want to bring money into the state, we're going to have to change the way that we run our governments, and that requires ethics reforms. And that's why I would think I would be the best candidate to do this, because I'm the only one here talking about ethics and talking about corruption.
Okay, we can do 30-second rebuttals or amplifications. Let's start in the same order. Tom Swazi.
So I think that whole point about New York being a net donor state is a very important point. Most of the blue states in the United States of America are donor states. Most of the red states are net taker states, with the exception of Texas. And when we set up federal tax policy, it was set up to try and help these other states that were not as sophisticated as New York State. But now, when they get their money, they're building new roads and new bridges and new sewers and new hospitals. When we get the money, which is less, we're paying for old roads and old bridges and old sewers and old hospitals. And we're challenged with these other states that are getting more money than us to keep up with them. And more people are moving to those states. So we have to bring more money back to our state, as Senator Moynihan started saying 30 years ago.
Approximately $23 billion is what we send down to Washington that we don't get back from our area. The Long Island Sound is a perfect example to show the kind of leadership and the kind of working across party lines and other levels of government that the opportunity provides. And in Congress, it's more than just those that represent the North Shore of Long Island. It's our partners in New York City, our partners in New England as well. And so it's a perfect example of being able to forge relationships and bring different levels of government in different states together for a common cause. The Long Island Sound, which is so precious and important to all of us, is a great example of that.
Yes, and again, this is one that we really do all agree. I could again point to some of the things that we've done in the town where I've taken the lead, and it is about making partnerships with congressmen, partnerships with legislators at all levels of government, but partnerships with the people who are impacted, the people who are going to be affected. The best way to receive dollars, bring in dollars, as I've indicated, is to know what the true needs of the local community are, understand how the local government can match and participate, understand the impact it's going to have, both positive and negative, and then take that to Congress and make it work. As a congressman, understanding how local government works, how state government works, is going to help me certainly be as effective as I can to bring more dollars here to make it more equitable and fair to our community.
I agree that a lot of our tax dollar that goes to Washington does not make it back here. I will fight very hard to bring more of that back here, work with other elected officials on the town level, county level, and state level to get things that our communities need accomplished.
And yeah, just sort of to amplify onto what Mr. Swazi was saying, that we are paying for states that eventually people are moving from Long Island and moving into those states. So Huntington, Virginia has, if you have $100,000 there, if you earn that, is completely different than if you earn $100,000 here. But we're taxed at the same rate. So these are other issues that we're going to have to explore, and I would support Congressman Israel, where you're taxed based on the cost of living within the area that you live. So all of these things, the money that goes out has to also be, I think we have to push for amplifying it and constructing it upon our tax-based system here in New York.
Okay. All three of the presidential candidates have said that they would change the health insurance system, known as, affectionately or unaffectionately, depending upon where you stand, known as Obamacare. Some more drastically than others. So I ask you all, what's working in Obamacare, what's not working, and how, if you have the opportunity, would you change it? We're starting with Steve Stern.
In speaking with a lot of individuals and a lot of businesses that I've had the privilege to represent, I've heard good stories, and I've had challenging stories presented to me as well. Certainly the vital elements are working, being able to remain on a parent's plan until you're 26, ending discrimination, making sure that women have access to the health care that they need, and making sure that literally millions of people across our country have good quality health care. And so there have been some great successes, but there are important changes that need to be made. Certainly when it comes to the cost of prescription drugs, particularly for our seniors, there needs to be better controls. We've heard stories where whether it is deductibles or other expenses that go along with perhaps something higher than what they had before, that needs to be controlled as well. And so whether it is some of the controls on particular individual policies or through a business, there are changes that can and should be made.
John Kamen.
I think the idea of Obamacare is an important one. We need some type of national health care. Unfortunately, I think there are great limitations that this healthcare system has created and in fact imposed. I do believe we must continue the concept. We must go forward with everybody having access to affordable health care. However, one of the great problems with Obamacare is that we have the people who implement it, doctors, nurses, who become the most severe critics. You can't have a system work when the people who are actually implementing the system feel like they're getting ripped off by the insurance companies, and the insurance companies feeling that they're not getting enough, and the people who are supposed to be getting the benefits feeling like they're not getting the quality health care that they're supposed to be getting. I think one of the problems is that you have the folks on the left, the Democrats, who refuse or are unable to open up the discussion about Obamacare because the people on the right will take any opportunity that they can to destroy it. So I support national health care. I think we need to tweak and fix it, but we need to maintain a national health care system.
Let's see, Anna.
I believe it's very important that we all have healthcare in this country. We live in a great country, and just like a lot of other countries out there, we owe it to all our residents to be able to tap into a healthcare that they can afford. I think Affordable Care Act is a wonderful thing. There are some problems with it. I walk around and I hear some positive things and some negative things about it. But I think it takes all of us to really work on this and make sure that it could work. I also think we need to take this and tweak it for our veterans who have really given their lives for the peace and the freedom that we enjoy here, and make sure that they are covered. Thank you.
Tom?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm behind the thing, so.
Yeah.
Well, I consider one of my mentors, Dr. Haskell Pickey, who's the head of cardiology at Stony Brook, and I was speaking to him actually just before we got here. And he told me that if he was to go back and do it again, if he was born right now, he would not want to become a doctor simply because of the administrative hoops that he has to jump through in administering the Obamacare healthcare program. I think that if we go back and we see how the program was developed, that the insurance companies had a very large seat at the table, the hospitals had a very large seat at the table when they were negotiating the Healthcare Act. And the two people that were really missing from the table were the doctors and the patients. I do agree that Obamacare was an improvement in that it expanded coverage. However, I think there's many provisions that have to be renegotiated and bring power back to the doctors and power back to the patients so we can deliver quality health care and not just make the insurance companies wealthy.
A decade from now, the Affordable Care Act will go down as being a great accomplishment, and there has to be things to reform it to work on the administrative kinks that exist in it. But my real big thing with healthcare is going after drugs, alcohol, and mental health. It's one of the biggest problems we face in society. It touches everybody, and nobody talks about it because of the shame related to these issues. There are kids dying from the availability of heroin these days who can't get proper treatment. Alcoholism is a very real thing. Mental health is a very real thing in people's lives. 75% of the people in jail have a drug, alcohol, or mental health problem. Most poverty is because of drugs, alcohol, and mental health. Problems that veterans are committing suicide are related to drugs, alcohol, and mental health. These are serious issues that touch everybody that we need to make a much bigger part of the mainstream conversation in our country. I'm also very concerned about long-term health care insurance. My father's gonna be 95 in August, my mother's 92, thank God they have long-term health care insurance. I can't imagine what senior citizens who don't have their kids living nearby and don't have long-term health care insurance do in this country. It's scary, it's terrifying, it needs to be addressed on a national level.
All right, let's do the 30-second rebuttal. We'll start with you, Steve Stern.
$1.1 trillion by the year 2050 for the cost of Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease by 2050 will have touched every single family in some way. And by the way, that cost is going to be as much as we spend on all of our defense budget right now. As an elder law attorney by background and as a decade serving as chairman of the Veterans and Seniors Committee, I've earned Congressman Steve Israel's support and his endorsement because he knows that these are the issues that aren't going to impact just every single family, but be tremendous challenge for our country going forward. And Larry, you mentioned, discussion in the presidential campaign, not one sentence when it comes to paying for the high cost of long-term care.
I think that there's unending issues regarding medical care that we can discuss and we all support. The question is, how do we address change, and how do we make sure that we expand resources and not bankrupt the country doing it? I think that requires the next Congress, the future Congress, the next president to make sure that we have people who are, again, impacted, the doctors, the nurses, the medical practitioners, patients, seniors, local businesses. I think we need not just a leadership from above, but I think we need every level of person and community and entity affected to look to make changes in the system so that we can add and grow a national health care program that will benefit all and not bankrupt the country in doing so.
Having healthcare right now might be very difficult, and I know there are tweaks that we have to make, but this is something that's very important to all of our residents, and we owe it for all of us to work together and make this work. The people, the patients, the doctors, the hospitals, the insurance companies. It will take really all of us working together, and I know that we can accomplish this, and as Tom said, this will be going in history as one of the really marking times in United States government.
Yes, if I had to add anything to it, I think that besides just focusing on coverage, we should also be focusing on preventative medicine and better educating, and so people can have an understanding how to live healthy lives. When Teddy Roosevelt was the mayor of New York City, he had improved health and he improved lifespan simply by disinfecting certain areas that were infected with typhoid. So, simple things like disinfectant cured a problem. And I think that we have to understand that a lot of the diseases that we suffer from now are inflicted on us by ourselves. So education in that regard will also serve to help healthcare enormously.
Okay.
I think I have one more shot.
Yes, you do.
So why is it so hard to change the status quo? It's because somebody's benefiting from the status quo. When we try to change insurance in this country, the insurance companies benefited. They didn't want it to change. To change the status quo, you need three things. First, you need an answer. What do you want to change it to? Second, you need the guts to stand up to status quo and take on the fight because they're going to try and squash you like a bug. And third, you need the ability to actually win the fight. I'm the one candidate in this race that has a proven record of standing up to powerful interests, no matter what the cost for me personally and politically, to fight the status quo to make change on behalf of the people.
Okay, a lot of people complain about partisan gridlock in Congress. Steve Israel founded something called the Center Aisle Caucus, and once was proud to point out that he voted with the Republican president more than any other Democrat. So judging by what you know of the Republican congressional agenda, name one or more issues beyond support for Israel and aid for first responders on which you could see yourself voting with the opposition party. Again, be as specific as possible. Not Israel, not first responders. We'll get to Israel and the others in a little while. We start with John Kane. Sorry.
Well, I will not be the congressman that votes more with the Republican president if we were to have one than any other congressman. I could tell you that. I would be on the other end of that spectrum. I hope that's not the case, and I am not stalling while I try to think of what thing I would vote for. But boy, it's really looking good right now. I think that how we protect New York, I would work with Peter King in his efforts to bring resources and understanding and knowledge and an effort to not just protect New York, but the whole country. But New York has been a target. And so looking for ways to partner with people who are rising above the partisan gridlock. And we do that when we are attacked from without. Certainly 9/11 is an indication of that, but that threat is ongoing. So I would say working with folks like Peter and our Congressman King and others, in terms of how we protect ourselves, bringing resources into our community and other places that are targeted, and trying to make sure that we bring the resources necessary to protect our communities.
I would work really across party lines and try to see what we could do in terms of making things affordable for our citizens and our residents. Working to make sure that our residents are safe. I know those are all the things that really make no difference to Republican or Democrats. I believe we all can work together in finding ways for our future and put America on a very different track and find jobs and create jobs for all our next generation, our children, so that they could have a better future. Thank you.
I would absolutely say that working on overturning Citizens United would be something that would go across party lines. The recent polls show that 85% of people are not behind Citizens United and the horrible campaign finance system that we have right now. So that one is definitely clear that Republicans and Democrats are both on board with that. I think one of the biggest tragedies of the Democratic Party and one of the missed opportunities is we should be representing small businesses. One of the achievements of the Republican Party is they have somehow convinced small businesses that their interests are that of multinational corporations. I would definitely like, if I was assigned to any committee, I would really want to be on a small business committee. As an attorney, I represent a lot of small businesses, and I know that the tax code is a big hurdle for a lot of people when they're starting out as is financing. So one of the things that I would work on with Republicans and try to take it now and make it a Democratic issue is promoting small business.
I've actually thought about this a lot. And if you saw my campaign theme, it's gets it done. I want to really think about getting things done. So I think that something that we need to focus on as Democrats is something the president already agrees upon and Republicans already agree upon, which is changing the corporate tax rate and figuring out how to bring the money that's overseas back into America and take that $2 trillion that we could generate by bringing that money back into the United States of America and investing it in infrastructure throughout this country, in our roads, our bridges, and our sewers, and our airports, and our trains, and rebuilding this country, which will create jobs, it'll improve our infrastructure, it'll improve our economy, and it's something that Republicans as well as Democrats can get together on. The president has already talked about this, the Republicans have already talked about it. It's something I would work very aggressively on to try and bring that money to create jobs, because creating jobs, middle class, solid wage paying jobs, is one of the most important things we need to do.
We can certainly come
Thank you for that
together.
enthusiastic response.
We can certainly come together and find common ground on serving the men and women that serve our great nation. Suffolk County is home to the largest number of veterans in all of New York State. It's something that we're very proud of. Unfortunately, we have too many of our veterans that have come home after serving their 4th, their 5th, their 6th tour in Iraq and Afghanistan, and many of them are dealing with too many challenges. It's why I wrote a series of bills that together I called the Housing Our Homeless Heroes Act, which is our very aggressive effort to end veterans' homelessness in our county. I had the opportunity to work with Congressman Israel in his drafting and introduction of the federal version of the Housing Our Homeless Heroes Act. That will be agenda item number 1, and I look forward to working with my Republican colleagues in Washington to pass what is essentially my version of the Housing Our Homeless Heroes Act in Congress.
And now, rebuttals, amplifications, amendations. John, you've had time to think about it. You can go first. I think, well, I can't seem to get this right.
John went first, so it's his turn to go if he wants to.
Yeah, we did a whole round. I did get it right. You did.
I do think that to, I guess, expand upon what I said before, there really is and are and have to be issues where we can work with people on both sides. The most important thing to work with people on the other side of the aisle is just to start the dialogue, to have the conversation, to challenge them, not as people in this polarizing manner, but to listen to what they're saying, try to understand where they're coming from, and try to make sure that we find some common ground. It is the most challenging thing. I've been speaking to Gary Ackerman about it. He tells stories about his experiences and how it's changed since then. Gary, by the way, has endorsed me, and I know Steve endorsed you, but I have Gary. They can fight vicariously against each other, and one of us may win. But I do believe that the whole dialogue has to change, and I believe there are Republicans out there that want to change that dialogue, and that is where you start to join together with the people on the other side of the aisle.
I think Republicans and Democrats all look and want to find ways that we can help our next generation. I think we can work together and find out different areas where we can create jobs for our children, where they can actually improve their quality of life and build on new jobs. Some of the jobs that have gone overseas, we probably won't see them come back. But you know, this is a very resilient country, and I know we can find other jobs that we could be the lead and the head, and we could show other countries how we do it, and create them here for our next generation, and always lead by an example.
Well, this is in rebuttal to what Mr. Swazi was talking about. What he said that he would work on is what's called corporate inversions, essentially where a company purchases another company in a different country with a lax tax system and declares itself to be a company of that origin instead of from the United States, and avoids taxes here altogether. Now, I was reading recently in the Long Island Now, Mr. Stern's response to this, and he said that he would lower the tax code as an incentive to have corporations come. So I think that that's respectable, and that's one way to do it, and that's a carrot approach. But I think it should be a stick approach. These companies have taken advantage of us far too long, and they don't need more tax breaks. We have to prosecute anybody that's doing this because it should be illegal. It's tax fraud.
So the different issues that people brought up, veterans and small businesses and bringing money back to New York are all very important things. But we have to recognize that the world has changed dramatically because of globalization and because of dizzying technological change. Kodak was one of the biggest companies in the world 10 years ago, and now it has almost 0 employees because of the iPhone. Airbnb is the largest hotel company in the world, but it only has 1,600 employees. The world has changed dramatically, and we need to change with it. It can't be just about blaming each other about everything, whether they want to blame the Latinos, they want to blame the Muslims, they want to blame the millionaires, blame somebody, blame somebody, blame somebody. We have to figure out how to solve problems and actually make people's lives better. And that's what I would like to try and do as your congressman.
I refuse to believe that we cannot find Republicans to work with in Washington who don't want to find a cure to Alzheimer's disease. This is the country that sent a man to the moon and back. You cannot tell me that we cannot, pooling our resources and with a smart allocation of research and development, make Long Island the capital of the world for Alzheimer's research, development, and ultimately finding a cure. Other states do it with some of the other challenges that we face, whether it's heart disease or spinal cord injuries. They bring their stakeholders together and they get federal funding to get it done because they work with their colleagues, not only at different levels of government, but across the aisle. That's the kind of cooperation that we can have here because it's a perfect example of all coming together to cure something that will have an impact on every single one of our families if we don't find a cure soon.
Okay, let's pivot overseas. Another of President Obama's major initiatives is the nuclear deal with Iran. So I ask, what is right about it, if anything in your view? What's wrong, and what, if anything, would you advocate to do about it? We start with Anna Kaplan.
So as an immigrant who left Iran and came to this country, when this whole conversation about Iran deal was going on, I came out against it. And I approached Supervisor Bosworth. And I said, I think we should speak up. This is a country that the Iranian people are wonderful people. But it's a regime that is not to be trusted. And it's a regime that we should not be given legitimacy to. I came out against it because at the time, we had 4 or 5 detainees, four or five American citizens that were being detained in Iran. And they were not part of the negotiation. But now we have a deal. I think we all need to move on and make sure that there is legislation that if Iran tries to go ahead against the Iran deal and all the details with it, we should have the sanctions snap right back. And we should always just be very careful how we deal with Iran because this is a country that has never proven to be trustworthy.
Thank you.
I'm absolutely for the nuclear deal with Iran. I think this will prove to be one of the milestones in diplomatic history. And making an enemy of Iran, I think, is a bad idea. If if we look at the demographics of Iran, it's up and coming as far as young people go, and it will change eventually. We have no problem being friends with Saudi Arabia, who is the most repressive regime within that area and who do fund ISIS. But we have problems with Iran, and that doesn't make sense to me. I think that the nuclear deal was good. I think maybe perhaps that we have to have an ability to sanction if they don't comply with it. However, I don't have any complaints against the nuclear deal.
I would have voted against the Iran deal. I don't think it was tough enough, and I think we have to be very vigilant watching out for our best ally in the region, Israel. We have to recognize that we have a unique opportunity in our history in the Middle East right now. For the first time in 50 years, America doesn't need the Middle East oil. People forget the fact that we created Osama bin Laden. We funded him to fight the Russians in Afghanistan. We funded Saddam Hussein to be our strongman in Iraq. We funded the Iranians when the Shah was there before the Ayatollah came. We funded the Saudis and are best friends with the Saudis while they're promoting Wahhabism in the region. We supported the Syrians. We did all of these different things in most part because we needed oil in the region. And even on the instances when that wasn't the reason, everybody in the Middle East thinks that was the reason. So nobody will ever trust us there. We need to reset that entire region and develop a 10-year plan recognizing that we don't need the oil in that region the way we used to use it. And we need to continue with our oil production in America and natural gas, but also move to green energy much more aggressively so that we are independent of those needs. And we need to reset our relationships with that entire region in a way that we can build trust and change what's been a 50-year bad relationship.
Thank you.
I would have opposed the Iran deal as well. I had several opportunities to discuss some of the finer points with Congressman Israel, and certainly been a tremendous leader on Israeli-Arab relations, and someone who I follow as an example, has been a political mentor of mine for years. And so I agree that it does present opportunity, but as my wife's favorite saying, we've all heard it, is, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And so I have several problems with the Iran deal as it's been structured, and I think we all have concerns about how it is to be implemented and how it is to be secured over time. But I look forward to a day where future arms deals or future peace deals bring protest from other parts of the Middle East and not from the streets of Tel Aviv or from Jerusalem. You stand by your friends, you stand by your allies, and there could be no daylight between the United States and our friend in the Middle East, our closest ally, Israel.
The nuclear deal is obviously complicated. It's a painful thing for our country and for the Middle East. I anticipate or believe I would have opposed it because the deal was not as good as it needed to be. I would not have opposed it as a precursor to war, and that was one of the options. And we have to decide as a country, is war our plan B if the deal doesn't work? And so I think that the nuclear deal, which left out many, many components that needed to be addressed, we still have a country that is going to be receiving billions of dollars when all the sanctions are lifted, and they're able to use those dollars for terror, to threaten us and other countries. And that danger is one that we can't take lightly. But the notion of dropping bombs, as one senator said, let's just spend a weekend dropping bombs in Iran and that'll end the problem, is pure fiction. We're embattled in countries throughout the world, and it doesn't solve the problem. So I believe that we needed to give greater thought before we made that final deal. The revelations with Ben Rhodes and how the administration got it passed and may have sold it to us are disturbing. And so with the sanction issue, I certainly have problems with Iran. I do have problems with the deal. We'll continue to have problems with the deal, and understand that Iran is not a country that can be trusted, and we do need to take additional measures somehow in the future.
Okay, again, rebuttals, amplifications.
Now we have the Iran deal. I think we need to look forward and move forward. But we just have to make sure there is legislation. And if there is any way that Iran is not to trust, but just keep on verifying, and if they are not abiding by the agreement, we need to have those sanctions snapped back. Thank you.
Just to reiterate, I think that if we look at American foreign policy, we've made a lot of stupid decisions. We've armed rebels that turn around and use our weapons against us. We promoted dissolutions of governments that were stable, all to our detriment. I believe that the nuclear deal is a way forward, and we should try to solve problems diplomatically and rather than going in with arms. I 100% support it. That's all I can say.
You know, it's true that we've made a lot of bad mistakes in foreign policy driven by things other than our national interest. And we have to be thinking about there's two ways of looking at foreign policy. You can look at what's the morally right thing to do and what's in the country's national interest. If we try to do the morally right thing in all the different places in the world that we're in trouble, we'd be involved in every single country in the world on a regular basis. We have to be looking at this nation's national interest on a regular basis. And right now, our national interest is to be with our friends and to stand by them in their most difficult situations. That's got to be a bright line policy that people recognize that when they're our allies, we're going to stand with them no matter what.
Though it is the nuclear deal, it is critically important that we continue to keep sanctions and even consider strengthening sanctions on violations of use of conventional weapons and ballistic missile testing. And so I could not agree more. We have to be in a position to be able to snap back, to reinstate sanctions, and that should be just as vigilant, just as aggressive, whether it is a ramp up to a nuclear Iran or the use and development of conventional and ballistic weapons as well.
The problem with the snapback provisions is that the rest of the world might not go along with them. So if we trigger a failure with Iran, and then we impose sanctions and the rest of the world does not, and there's indications that they won't, then where are we? And that's why there was a fundamental problem with the deal itself. If we couldn't guarantee that when they violated, or we perceive that they violated, or they did things that offend us, which they do regularly, we are limited in any ability to take actions now. So I think we need to recraft a new approach, and I can't tell you exactly where we need to go with that. I would look to one of my mentors, as I've indicated, Gary Ackerman, and I would speak to Steve Israel, and I would speak to others who have the expertise in this. I would look to communities, including Israel and Netanyahu and all the folks that are impacted by this. But there is no easy answer, and the snapback provisions, unfortunately, are not going to be an easy answer to solve the problems that we're going to be facing from Iran in the future.
Okay, now my favorite portion of the evening, candidates asking questions of each other. The first candidate who gets to ask the question of any one person is Jonathan Clark. The person asked the question will get 2 minutes to answer, and then everybody else gets about a minute to pile on. You can ask the question as expeditiously as you can.
Okay. At a previous debate, this question is for Mr. Swazi. At a previous debate, I mentioned the People's Pledge, which is essentially a deal between the people running for office that they're not going to take third-party money. I read an op-ed that you wrote that said that campaign finance reform is needed because smaller candidates who can't raise the money can't compete with the larger candidates, and this is not competition. At the previous debate, I reached out to everyone and I asked, would you sign the People's Pledge to limit third-party spending in this campaign, since we can't overturn Citizens United ourselves, but we can agree and get something done that night to fight campaign finance problems.
So what's your question?
My question is, I haven't heard anything back from anybody.
No, you're asking a question of
Mr. Swazi. But
5 seconds.
But specifically considering the fact that you want campaign finance reform, how come you weren't willing to enter into that agreement?
Because I'm not going to tie my hands behind my back to fight a very tough race. So I'm not going to sign that pledge. Let me tell you that I've been working on the issue of campaign finance reform. People have been talking about it for 30 years. As a senior in law school, I was the volunteer staff on the New York State Commission on Government Integrity. My dean of my law school, John Feerick, was the chairman of the New York State Commission on Government Integrity. And the report was about campaign finance reform in New York State. And I got the New York State Bar Association Ethics Award for my work that I did on the Commission on Government Integrity. But this is such a hairy topic that is so hard to change. And it needs to be changed in this country. And I don't think the answer is for me to sign a pledge in this race. But I will fight against powerful interests that want to keep these laws the way they are because they benefit the way them making money, as I've done throughout my career, standing up to powerful interests to get things done on behalf of the people that I serve. The reason campaign finance laws don't change is because people who make a lot of money off of government and off of government laws pay lobbyists to keep the laws the way they are and to stifle things and keep the status quo the way it is.
Okay, I'm going to make a battlefield decision to limit the rebuttals to 30 seconds because we'll never get through all the questions that we have from the audience. So Steve, Steve Stern, you have 30 seconds to rebut or comment on anything you've heard.
Question from...
Yeah, on Tom Swazi's answer. You don't have to. John?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a simplicity in when you've not done this before. This is hard, this business. Raising money, trying to get out there and present your argument, who you are to the people. And the rules are the rules. And so we're given the opportunity to raise money, and then someone says, well, don't raise money and don't collect this and let them do that. And it really is a challenge. And good meaning people have an opportunity to say, well, let's just cut all that out and not take this, not take money from whomever they don't like at that particular moment. I think campaign finance reform is the answer. There needs to be a solution. Citizens United is deplorable. At the end of the day, it's unsustainable the way finance works. We've seen the interviews with Steve Israel. We need to change the system, possibly through a constitutional amendment. I would support that constitutional amendment.
It's your floor if you want to.
As it was said, it is a very difficult race. There are 5 candidates running for this seat. The district is so big, starting from Whitestone Bridge and going all the way out to Suffolk County. In order to get your message out, it does require a lot of money. It's unfortunate that it has to be this way, but it is the truth. And if there is a PAC that's going to help, I'm not going to turn it down either.
And you get the last 30 seconds of piling on, if you like.
I just think it's unfortunate that Mr. Israel is stepping down because he didn't want to raise an extra dollar. And I think it's just very unfortunate that no one up here would be willing to forego third-party spending, which really wouldn't affect getting their message out. And it would be more symbolic that they were standing against all the corruption that comes from campaign finance reform. So if you really are interested in campaign finance reform, I think it's just clear that I'm the only candidate that's going to take it seriously.
Tom Swazi, you can ask a question of any candidate.
I'm going to ask a question of Steve Stern. Steve, I want to know, have you ever seen this piece of literature from NY03 when they endorsed me in 2013, where they said Tom Swazi supports women and treats our decisions with dignity? He supports Roe versus Wade and the right of every woman to make their own private medical decisions about pregnancy, and it goes on with other things that NY03 included in their endorsement of me. In addition, have you ever seen this document from Planned Parenthood when they gave me a 100% pro-choice rating? That's the only thing I want to ask of you, Steve.
Council, that's inadmissible.
I have not seen that, Tom.
It's right here. You can look at it right now.
Look at my glasses. I have not seen that, Tom. But what I have seen is the fact that you took an $11,000 contribution from Donald Trump and to this day have refused to explain why you won't give it back. The Republican nominee who goes against in this campaign is running a campaign against just about every single core democratic value that we hold dear, and you've been silent. That's what I've seen, and that's what I've heard. And we're still waiting for an explanation as to why you refused to give back the $11,000 that you took from Donald Trump.
John King, you will get it at the very end. You get the last link. John King, you want to jump into this?
I've not seen them either.
That's expeditious.
Don't have anything to add.
Jonathan Clark.
Well, I guess since this tangentially relates to women's rights, I just want to point out that my treasurer is a female, Danielle. My campaign manager is also female, Nicole. And my election attorney, Blair, over there is. So I think I'm probably the only one up here that's basically has a campaign run by women. Thank you.
But what about your lives?
And I'm the only candidate who's a woman running for this seat.
Tom Swazi, as I said, last licks.
I think that Steve Stern's Trump attack on me, where I got a contribution 7 years ago, as did Kathleen Rice, as did Hillary Clinton, as did Chuck Schumer, as did numerous other candidates, Carolyn Maloney, go on and on and on, is why people are sick of politicians. Because they'll try and distract people with these issues that have nothing whatsoever to do with the problems in this country. And they try and score petty political points on things that have nothing whatsoever to do with this race.
Well, Steve Stern, it's your turn to ask a question of any candidate you'd like.
Sure. My question is for Mr. Swazi. This primary is about who is going to best represent our core democratic values and who everybody in this room believes is going to be the best candidate to win a very difficult race in November and keep this a Democratic seat. Someone who's going to be able to best carry out, continue the legacy of Steve Israel.
Question.
My question, Tom, is you've disappointed North Shore Democrats on a consistent basis. And much of that has to do with your record of raising
question, Steve?
taxes, taking raises, particularly during challenging times. My question is, how do you possibly think that you are going to be the best Democratic candidate to not only win the primary, but to win what's going to be a very difficult general election in the fall and keep this a Democratic seat?
Okay, so the first thing you said is I've disappointed North Shore Democrats. When I was the first county executive that was a Democrat, with a Democratic legislature since 1917 in Nassau County. I think I did a lot of work to help Democrats on the North Shore. In addition, you say that I raised taxes, and it's true, I did raise taxes, but at least I'm being honest about it. In your literature, you proclaim that you never raised general fund taxes, when in reality, you did raise property taxes by 23% for the police district. Did you or didn't you? Yeah, true or not, though? Okay, you don't want to answer the question. Okay. So you have a habit of trying to play with things on the choice issue, on this raising taxes issue, and I can go on with other things. That is really the thing that makes people sick about politicians. So I will do everything I can, if I'm the Democratic candidate, to work as hard as I can to represent the people of the North Shore. And I'll do everything I can to win this race for the Democrats. Oh, I have a lot more to say, but I'll say it in a second.
John Kamen, would you like to jump into this?
You know, I really, it's a difficult place that we're being put in. We're running as Democrats. One of us is going to win, and then we're going to go on and take on the Republican Party in a challenging race. I believe that a lot of us need to be careful in terms of how we criticize each other. Governing is hard. When you're responsible for making decisions, everyone's not going to agree with them, and when they're taken out of context, we find it on a piece of literature trying to make us look bad and challenging our integrity and challenging the integrity of everybody that supported us in the past, indicating that maybe they failed by believing in this person. I believe that Tom did a great job. I believe that Steve Stern, as a legislator, is doing his best job. Anna and John, well, yeah, certainly you're coming here trying to discuss issues and put them at the forefront. I know that I'm proud of what I've done. I believe in the people that have served under the Democratic banner. I think at some point we are going to band together and really show that we're going to make a difference, even though we've made our mistakes, and we'll continue to make more as we go along.
I believe everyone on this stage has a right to be a candidate, or anyone in the audience. And ultimately, we leave it for you guys, the voters, on June 28th to decide who would be the best candidate, who would be your voice in representing you in Congress.
Just to say, as a rebuttal to everything that's been said here, and more of a demarcation between me and the rest of the candidates, obviously I'm the only one who hasn't held office, and I think that that's a good thing. I think that if you like the way politics have been done in Nassau County and Suffolk County for the last 20 years, then you have your candidates. I really want to try to do something different. I really want to fight for you, and I don't want to be beholden to any party or any situation where I have to be manipulated by my campaign donors. So I think that, if anything, this discussion raises the fact that nothing's really been done in politics, and we need someone who's willing to take a stand.
You know, it's important that I talk about this. I won a lot of races in my life, but I also lost races. I lost the race when I ran against Elliot Spitzer, and it really knocked a lot out of me. And I lost in 2009 by 386 votes out of 250,000 votes because I didn't work hard enough, and I'll never make that mistake again. And in 2013, I ran an absolutely awful campaign trying to rely on consultants. And one thing I'm trying to do in this campaign, and I hope I'm demonstrating it tonight, is I'm not being poll tested, I'm not being careful, I'm saying what I believe and what I think, because I want to try and get back to what I really believe in politics, which is fighting for people to solve real problems in their lives. I don't want to get a job and just focus on keeping the job. I want to do the job and actually try and solve problems on behalf of people. And if you give me the opportunity to run for this race and to win this race, I'll do everything I can to try and make your lives and the lives of the other people in this district better. Thank you.
Vesnick, Steve Stern.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. And the point of the question, I think, was this. This is a critically important race, not just for us here locally, but for the country. In Washington, they rate this race as one of the top 4 races in the country this year. The stakes are high. They could not be higher. And so who the people in this room elect come primary day, who you choose to carry the Democratic banner into the fall, has to be the person that is going to be best able to deliver a victory for us here on the North Shore of Long Island and for the Democratic Party come the fall.
Okay. John Kamen, you have a question for one of the candidates.
So based on what I said before, I have a question for Anna Kaplan. So 3 days ago, my staff put 3 lawn signs in front of your house. Do you forgive me for doing that? I shouldn't have, that was a big, it was the prom, they were taking pictures, and they came out, and so I had to go take the signs out myself. But sorry about that, Anna.
So I texted
That's
back
it?
and
That's the question?
That's my question. Does she forgive
There
me?
was no question there.
Yeah, does she forgive me for playing this?
Okay.
So I texted him back and
I
I
did
told
text
him no problem. And it's all forgiven and forgotten. And I can tell you, I came into this whole scene through John. I've learned a lot from him, and I'm really proud of my own accomplishment and being a voice for a lot of people in this district. And would just like to say, I believe I'm the best candidate here sitting, and I believe I have the best chance of winning in November. And I hope that you can trust me and believe that I would be your voice, and I would be working as hard for you in this capacity. Thank you.
Does anybody want to read this? Okay, let's go on then. Anna Kaplan, you have a question for a candidate.
Steve Stern, why are you running for this seat?
Well, I can tell you, I'm running to build on a record that I'm very proud of. A record of, a demonstrable record of fighting for middle-class families and protecting our environment, protecting the Long Island Sound, and a record of working hard for our veterans and our seniors, people with disabilities. These are the issues that I'm most passionate about. These are the issues where I've been able to deliver meaningful results that have really meant so much for so many families. By the way, not just in Suffolk County, but many of my legislative initiatives are literally the first of their kind in New York State and even first in the country. So I've had that meaningful impact for many, not just in my area, not just in Suffolk County, but on a much larger regional and even national level as well. I look forward to the opportunity of bringing that experience and making a real difference, not just for us here on Long Island, not just in New York, but across our great nation.
John Kamen, response?
Do I get to answer why Steve's running or why I'm running?
You know, it's your time.
It is an open-ended question for us to all talk about why we're running, I suppose. I'm running for Congress because I believe I have a history and I have a foundation in understanding how government works and what we need to make a difference. And a lot of these lofty ideals are real. We want to believe in the person we sent to Congress. We want to think that that person is going to fight for us, that they're going to stand up, whether it's a Trump or anybody else who somehow is beating us down. People are losing confidence in government, and we need to put ourselves into the fray, and it's really, really, really hard, because no matter which way you turn, you get attacked, you get pushed down. And so I think when people who are giving up on government look at stagnant wages, when they look at what's going on with terror around the world, and when they look at what's going on with Planned Parenthood, this incredible, wonderful organization being attacked through lies, we look at these attacks at every level, and we say, this is disturbing, this is awful. We need somebody who can stand up and be honest with us, can fight that fight. So I'm running for Congress because I believe I am that person. And if you've been with me over these years, if you took that journey at the beginning and you're here with me now, you will know that I am a fighter, and that while all of us have something to say, and we all have our story, the question is, who's going to be able to stand in Washington in today's environment, a do-nothing Congress, a polarized world,
Thank you.
and find the person that you can believe and trust in. I hope that person is me.
Polarized world is good. You go now.
Yes, when I first saw the lineup of candidates that were running, I thought to myself that there doesn't seem to be one progressive among them, with the exception of John Cooper, but he unfortunately didn't continue with the race. That was my motivation, and the reason I'm running is because I want to give the people a choice to have an actual progressive candidate. I think that it was very opportune that Mr. Israel stepped down due to the fact that he didn't want to raise any more campaign funds any longer. I think that this is probably the preeminent issue facing politics today. I am running because I want to fix the broken campaign finance system. Now, I think that I am a person that is willing and capable of standing up to big interest. I mean, just for the fact that I'm sitting here myself, I think shows the amount of tenacity that I have. You know, I started from nothing, I came from nothing, and now I'm sitting here. So that fight, I'm willing to take to Washington to fix the big problems that we have.
I'm running for Congress because I want to make the world a better place to live in. And I see that we have major problems in this country and in this world. And I believe that my life experience as an attorney, as a certified public accountant, as a mayor for 8 years, as a county executive for 8 years, and being in the private sector makes me uniquely equipped to actually help solve the problems that exist with my record of standing up to powerful interests to get things done on behalf of people. I'm running because I'm worried about senior citizens like my parents. I'm running because my kids who are going to college, and I'm worried about them finding jobs and other kids finding jobs. I'm running because I'm worried about that there are structural problems in this country, that the middle class is shrinking. I'm worried about the environment and climate change and people not actually addressing the problems. I'm worried about terrorism and what's going on in the world today. And I believe that I have a unique set of skills that I bring to the table, and I have an obligation to use these skills to actually try and solve these problems and help solve these problems.
And I guess, Steve, you get a last lick since you were asked the question. Yeah, she asked him the question why he's running.
Well, again, I'm running for Congress because not only am I running to build on a record that I'm very proud of, but you know, I have a living room that I go home at night to, and I see my wife and my children, my father, who I care for as a caregiver. I'm concerned about him and whether or not he's going to have retirement security, and if I'm not around to take care of him, is he going to have adequate long-term care? I'm concerned about my children and whether or not I'm going to be able to afford college for them, and if they're going to have the opportunities that I had growing up to be able to meet their potential. And I look at my wife and I share those concerns with so many of you as to whether or not she's going to have access to adequate health care, and whether or not she or any of our daughters are going to be able to exercise their right to choose in the future. These are the anxieties that we see in the Stern House every day. They are the very same anxieties that so many of us in this room feel. And I'm running for Congress, not just to build on a record that I'm very proud of, but because when you send Steve Stern to Congress, you are sending someone that shares those very same concerns that you do on a daily basis.
Okay, Steve, when do the doors close? Can we go a little beyond 9 if people want to stay? All right, yeah, because we've got a few more from the audience. About a quarter of the questions dealt with Israel and the Mideast in one form or another. So I'm going to ask generally and specifically for you to discuss your positions, feelings about the U.S. relationship with the State of Israel, and also to mention one thing that should change one way or another. We start with Yeah, we're back to Jonathan. You're right. Thank you. Right.
Obviously, I strongly support our best ally in the region, Israel. I think that what has to change, though, is the way that we go about dealing with crisis in the Middle East, and crises throughout the entire world. We've been a very strong force militaristically, and we've made a lot of stupid decisions. I think that the way that we have to start approaching diplomatic relations is more intelligently and working through a process, what's called soft power. I think that we can take a good lesson from the French. They're the best at doing this. We don't have to use strength at every point, and I think that we should really have good negotiators come to the table to try to broker arrangements that could possibly usher in a two-state solution. I think that a lot of people have given up on that, but I think that that really should be what we should focus on. I think that if we could stabilize that area, a lot of the problems would fall apart. I think that also we have to change our relationship with Saudi Arabia. I think that Saudi Arabia is one of the worst countries in the world, and we have to really stop being the ally to Saudi Arabia.
I visited Israel in 2002, shortly after the massacre in Hebron, and during the Second Intifada. And there was nobody else staying at the King David Hotel other than the delegation that I was with. And it was a very intense political, governmental, educational experience where we visited Yad Vashem, and we met with the press relations person of Ariel Sharon. I met Shimon Peres. I met the U.S. ambassador to Israel. I went to the Albert Einstein University. I went to Hadassah Hospital and saw the skin banks there. I visited Gutzit Zion. I learned how they made the desert bloom. I learned so much. And then all of a sudden, I found myself at the Western Wall. And all of a sudden, I realized that this is where Jesus walked. And it was a very emotional experience for me. And I went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And it was an amazing part of my religion, an amazing experience for me. And that night, I decided I have to go to church the next morning. So I snuck out of my hotel without our armed guards with Uzis and chicken wire on the buses, and I snuck to go to church that morning. I went to church, and I was so moved, and I thought about the meaning of life, and I was so proud of myself. I'm such a good Catholic boy to go to church like that. I'm so courageous that I went without my armed guards. And then I walked outside, and I saw the little girls getting on the bus to go to school that day. And I realized that these were the people that were so courageous, who for 60 years people have been trying to kill them. And despite all that, they've remained our ally. They've remained people that share our values. They made the desert bloom. They did things that are just so remarkable. And I decided at that very moment that I would do everything I could to try and protect the state of Israel and demonstrate our close relationship with them no matter what.
Thank you.
I was in Israel a little more recently than that, and I stood on the border with Gaza. I was in Sderot, and we had the opportunity to visit many that lived in the area and saw neighborhoods, and you saw economic development, you saw a big boom, you saw building going on. And you thought that it was a positive until you realized very quickly that they were not building. What they were doing was choosing a single room in each house that was going to act as the safe room to be able to withstand ongoing assault from Hamas and the Qassam rockets. I had the opportunity to speak with young people at the local college there, and what was so impressive was that they were so passionate about laying down their roots after they graduated college, not going to Tel Aviv, not going to Jerusalem, not coming to the United States, but staying right there in Sderot, laying down their roots and starting their professional lives, their personal, their family lives, because they wanted to be a part of the resilience and a part of the solution. What a tremendous impact. And so what you learn very quickly, standing there, what I learned very quickly, is that you have to appreciate the resilience of the Israelis, and you quickly understand that there can be no daylight between our two nations.
I think the critical thing for Israel is to be able to continue to grow with other nations throughout the Middle East and throughout the world. Israel is partnering through technology and through support in so many ways. At the same time, through the BDS movement, the boycott and the divest movement, there are younger folks especially, but people throughout the world looking to question the viability of Israel itself, economically and ultimately as a nation. That needs to change. There needs to be a dialogue throughout the world as to what Israel really stands for, why it exists, and how it will continue to exist. The people who are yearning for their own state. Palestinian people do need an opportunity to create that state. They need to first accept and acknowledge Israel's right to exist. There needs to be a fundamental agreement that both sides will acknowledge each other's right to exist, but it has to start with those surrounding Israel saying, we will not try to destroy you if we partner with you. And then if Israel can create that dialogue throughout not just the Middle East, but throughout the world, explaining who they are and why they are and where they've come from, and somehow challenge that BDS movement, and we need to support that challenge because that is undermining the fabric of Israel, then we will, I think, ultimately lead to a two-state solution.
Thank you.
As a Jewish refugee, an immigrant leaving Iran, because my parents and the community was very fearful for their lives, I understand the importance of a Jewish state. It is critical for us to make sure that Israel knows we are their biggest ally. We have to stand strong with Israel because it is such a small country and it's surrounded by all the other countries that are not stable right now. What we can do as US residents, make sure that our government tries to make possibility of people coming to the table with clean hands and clean hearts and wanting to reach peace. I know State of Israel is trying very hard and is also very much believing in having a two-state, but we have to make sure they're not cornered into agreeing things that it really would make it impossible for them to survive. Thank you.
30 seconds if you want to amplify. Or
I believe in a two-state solution. It was explained to me first by Shimon Peres, and I've watched it closely ever since. But there is no partner for peace right now. You can't have a two-state solution right now. You want to have a two-state solution because if the Palestinians were ever to make a deal with the Israelis, and they say, the Israelis, if somebody broke the peace on their side, the police would arrest them, or the army would go after them. They'd say, you're not following what we're doing as a country. When the Palestinians, all of a sudden someone blows a bomb up, they say, it wasn't me, it was Hamas. It wasn't me, it was Hezbollah. You have to have a state to enforce it. But right now there's no partner for peace to actually have a two-state solution. And you can't do this without a partner for peace, and it doesn't exist at this time.
The partner for peace does not exist at this time. And I think one of the things that really needs to change going forward is that you cannot have several countries all pushing and bringing influence that could result in a false peace. The only true and lasting peace is going to be made between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And that's the approach that we in the United States need to encourage.
So peace was created between Egypt, between other countries in the Middle East. It can work. And again, that has to come through dialogue, and there's a movement afoot that I think is based in anti-Semitism, but there's a sense that it has something to do with fairness. And when the people you're trying to defend are perceived or even believe that you have to kill the other side to get your way, you're never going to achieve peace. And so there's a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, there's no dialogue, there's no meaningful way to achieve some type of result. Israel has to survive. We need to stand with Israel. We need to help Israel create friends throughout the not just the Middle East, but the world. We need to do that in a way that defends our ally, but we also need to do that in a way that shows respect for peoples of all over the world and understand why they are raising questions, and then explain to them, and again, share history and dialogue and purpose. And I believe that when people understand what Israel truly stands for, people can, around the world, support Israel. We need to be there with them and help create that dialogue.
As I said before, a Jewish state is very important to all of us. Right now, with the circumstances and also with all the different regime and instability all over Middle East, it's very hard to really reach for that goal. But I think we have to keep on trying to see at some point when the area is a little more stable, to get everybody around the table and see what can be achieved, because I think that's something that it's in the best interest of everyone, and I know it's also the want and the need of the Israeli people.
I think this is all really great points. And just to add, I guess one thing that's sort of overlooked, I'm Irish Catholic, and the Irish and English were blowing each other up and fighting very viciously for a very long time. And one of the things that sort of mitigated that hatred and the vitriol between them was economic development in Northern Ireland. I think similarly, Palestinians are living in a situation where there are no opportunities. And I think that we also see this in terrorism and people that join jihad. There's a feeling and a frustration that there's no opportunity. So I think that when we're talking about the Middle East, we should also be focusing on development in a sense that gives everybody a voice so they won't feel that their only resort are to launch rockets.
Another question from the audience. The Social Security Trust Fund is expected to become insolvent in about 2037. What solutions would you propose to extend its solvency much further into the future? What's on the table? What's off the table? Yeah, we start with, yes, next.
So this is a very real issue. There's only two solutions, like any budgetary issue, is you can either raise revenues or you can reduce expenses, which would require you to reduce benefits. One thing that is off the table, I believe, is increasing the minimum retirement age for Social Security. And the reason for that is that although I believe that white-collar workers could possibly withstand an increase in the age, I think that blue-collar workers couldn't. People's bodies just wear out and from working in physical blue-collar jobs. And I think that that's one thing that's definitely off the table. I think that things that are on the table you have to look at is whether you should increase the amount of money that is taxed by the Social Security tax. And there's a lot of different proposals out there from Hillary Clinton and from Bernie Sanders as to what should be done. But I think in order to generate the revenues that you need to solidify the fund, you have to look at increasing the amount of money that you collect Social Security taxes on above what is now, $120,000.
Yeah, I see this and have seen this my entire career, representing our older neighbors and their family members. And when we talk about Social Security, we also talk about those who have disabilities and special needs. Given the challenges that someone might have physically and not be able to continue to work, whether someone could never have worked gainfully because of a disability, you see many people that are relying on the Social Security program, and many more who are relying on the Social Security program at an earlier age, not a later age, and opting for early retirement, even at reduced benefits. And so we have to recognize that the Social Security system, which was supposed to be part of a secure retirement, is that much more of one because of whether it's lack of pensions or savings. And retirement security has to be one of our top priorities. And so, yeah, on the revenue side and making sure that we have a solvent system, but I think it goes along with protecting our middle-class families, and that is, there are billions and billions of dollars that we are sending to big oil companies and big pharmaceutical companies and big agriculture. They don't need those subsidies. And we, as American taxpayers, no longer need to subsidize and support companies that are trying to just preserve the past rather than investing in the future. Nowhere is that more evident than when it comes to protecting our Social Security program.
I certainly think that we can't abandon a system, and there are some who've been running for president to suggest that we should abandon this system and create a new system, privatize, and that'll work, the free market economy. The whole reason we have Social Security is to make sure that we have that safety net, and it has worked, and we need to sustain it. And there are ways to tweak it that might make sense, such as possibly reducing the amount that you get if you're making a certain amount of money or above. That being said, I would like to take a moment to talk about how do we help seniors, not just in terms of saving Social Security, but also in helping navigate their lives in their aging years. And many of you have heard me talk about Project Independence. We haven't had a chance to talk about seniors, so I will take a moment and say that I think the real answer for seniors is how do we help them age in place? How do we find all the services, all the resources that were dedicated to seniors and make sure people have access to them? In our town, when I created 311, the first suburban 311, we married that with Project Independence, where we gave seniors, people who were 60 years and older, access to all the services services that other entities have created, the village, the town, the state, the federal government, the private sector. And we made sure that they had not just access to this, but they understood how to utilize them. And ultimately, when you have a senior population that's aging, and they have access to social workers and visiting nurses and handymen, and when they have a ride to their shopping, to a free taxi ride, or a discounted ride to their medical visit, they're not only are they safer, but they're healthier. When you're healthier, you cost less money, you spend less money on other healthcare needs. And so I think that there's a larger discussion that has to happen with seniors. Social Security has to be preserved, but there's a longer discussion, and certainly I have a history of doing that.
One of the greatest things about the United States is the Social Security program. Our seniors have worked very hard to create the communities that we are living now and getting the benefit. And now it's our time to really give back to them. We need to do whatever we can to preserve the Social Security and for seniors to know that we're not abandoning them. We need to increase revenues, and just like it was said, Senator Clinton has some ideas. If she's to be the next president, I would love to read those legislation and make sure those are the stuff that we can all put our support behind and make sure that our seniors know that they are a big part and a vital part of our communities. Thank you.
As I said when I first came in, my father raised me on Social Security disability. I grew up very poor, and that was primarily the way they brought money into the family. So I know firsthand the difficulty of living on the meager amount of money that Social Security produces. I think that we have to, absolutely, as Mr. Swazi said, or maybe you didn't say it, but we have to reclassify what's taxable income for Social Security. I think we have to, anything above the $125,000 limit has to be taxed and brought into the Social Security Trust Fund. I think also besides that fact, expenses for seniors in forms of prescription medications has to be changed. The drug companies do make obscene amounts of money, and obviously the drug companies do great things in the fact that they provide wonderful medicines for people, but they do make an enormous profit as well. So I think that the twofold things, reducing costs for seniors through prescription medications and to raise the cap on the amount of income that's taxable for Social Security.
Well, I was just informed that there is no time for rebuttals and no time for any more questions from the audience, right, Steve? And we're going to go to the closing statements, and if you'd like to get into something in particular that we haven't discussed, that would be great too. Steve Stern, start off. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the reverse would be John Kamen.
So again, I'm running for Congress because I believe that the things I've done in my past are important, and I think I understand how to navigate challenges that we face at the local level, the state level, the federal level. There are issues that are not just important to us here in Great Neck, but in Suffolk County, in Queens. The next congressman will be representing 3 different counties. We need to deal with co-op issues and how they're overtaxed. We need to deal with airplane noise. We need to deal with challenges that we're facing here with infrastructure and our bays and our water underneath where we are. At the end of the day, there are so many challenges with infrastructure and cost and trying to make our communities sustainable, helping our schools, which are facing challenges as well. In some respects, they may even be under attack. There's a disconnect between how our teachers are respected and how testing is applied. And so that needs to be changed. The federal government needs to have a different analysis, a different mechanism for connecting to schools, because right now it's not working. I think that there are so many areas where a congressman needs to focus, but it has to start locally. It has to start with the people who are living in the community, who are dealing with challenges that they're facing, and we need to figure out how to work together, but how to get those resources, pass the laws, make sure that we're doing everything necessary to give us a fighting chance to make the dream come true. At the same time, we have to stand. I'll tell you
It was a fast minute. Sorry, you've got to move on.
We have to stand with each other. I'll leave it at that.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
1 minute.
I want to thank the Democratic Club and also Larry Levy for this opportunity. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I hope you walk away, get a little sense of who we are. I can tell you this is a seat not about any one of these candidates sitting up here. It's about you and who would be your closest voice, who would fight for you the hardest, and who would try to deliver the best results for you. I can tell you, I've been a fighter all my life. This is another fight for me, and I'm really made for this fight. And I'm happy to say I would like to go to Congress and be your voice and your advocate. Bring back results, bring back funds to prevent substance abuse, bring back more funds so that we can make sure our borders are very safe, bring back results to make this place more affordable so our next generation can move in and make this a viable place for all of us to live together, for the seniors and the next generation. Also work very hard to make sure that Planned Parenthood is there, because it's a place for a lot of people who don't have another place to go to. It's about being a voice for people who don't have a voice. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and like I said, this is amazing that so many people have showed up. I mean, if we look at the turnout for the primary election that just recently happened, we had about 18% turnout. And of that 18% turnout, I'd like to point out that many of those people that did show up to vote weren't permitted to vote because their affidavit, because they weren't on the voter rolls. If you look me up, I am the attorney that filed a large federal lawsuit trying to take the people who are disenfranchised and get their vote counted. That, I think, would really speaks volumes about who I am. I'm willing to stand up to large interest, which is the Board of Elections in the state of New York, to try to get people their rights to vote back. I think that what we're facing today is a true crisis between the corruption in government, between the horrible campaign finance system, and I think that people are very apathetic, and that's why they're not turning out to vote. I really want to change that. I really want to be a voice for everyone here. I want to make it so that the turnout is enormous because they believe in the candidates that they have up there, and not just because they're party hacks that have been there for 20, 30 years. Thank you.
Everyone up here is a good Democrat, and there's not much difference between us on policy issues, but I'm the one candidate that has a proven record of standing up to powerful interests to get things done on behalf of people, whether it was balancing the budget in Nassau County, whether it was fighting with the PBA when necessary, whether it was fighting Fix Albany and getting in trouble with Shelley Silver and Joe Bruno at the time. I've done everything I can to try and fight on behalf of people to make things better for people. I still believe in politics. Everybody's sick of politics these days. I still think politics is a noble profession. I still believe in the American dream. It's very simple. You work hard every day, you make enough money, so you can afford to buy a house, you can educate your kids, you can buy health insurance, and you can retire one day without being scared. I'll do everything I can to address the structural problems that exist in this country, trying to build a coalition, a band of doers, Democrats and Republicans, working together to try and solve problems to make this country achieve its great potential that it has, because it's still the greatest place on earth, but there's serious problems that we face right now. And it requires people that are willing to stand up and be counted, because they're people of goodwill that actually want to do the right thing. It's not about extremism on each side, fighting each other just for the point of staking up for a particular point. It's about getting things done to actually solve problems to make people's lives better, and that's what I'll do if I'm your congressman. Thank you.
I'm running for Congress to build on a record that I'm very proud of, on a record of accomplishment, a record of making a difference for so many, not just locally, not just regionally and across our state, but even as a legislator. You do have the opportunity to see up close and personal how one person working with others and other levels of government across party lines can get things done and make a difference. That's what Steve Israel knows. When I earned his endorsement, he knows that I am the best candidate to best take forward our core democratic principles and win the general election in the fall. But I'm running not just to build on a record of accomplishment, but to continue my outstanding work with my staff on making a difference for so many. Here's an example that I like to cite. Dear Legislator Stern, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for all of your help. I just learned my mother's home care assistance will be restored. She's 92 with dementia, and I'm her only caregiver. This assistance will assure her safety and give me some rest and peace of mind. This would not have happened without you. It is wonderful to know that I have a public official who truly cares. That's why I'm running for Congress, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have a round of applause for all the candidates. And a round of applause for all of you for sticking with us. Thank you for being here. And now I'd like to turn over the microphone to Steve Markowitz.
I too would like to thank all the candidates. As you can see, it's going to be an incredibly tough decision for each one of us to figure out who we're going to support. But I know whoever does get the nomination will go on to victory in November. All right, many of you have joined the club, you have been members of the club, joined the club, you have a ballot. Please fill out the ballot. There's a box in the back where it will be collected. The counting of the votes will take place under the supervision of the former county controller, Howard Weitzman. And we will have we'll announce tomorrow the winner of our straw poll. I'd like to particularly thank the Great Neck